So things are finally starting to calm down for me a little bit now that I've been attending a few grief conferences this summer as a speaker and signing my books. And it really got me thinking, meeting all of these amazing and wonderful people, why is it that some people grieve so differently than others? For some people, the road to healing, even though it's painful, will be a lot more smooth and steady. And eventually these people will find a way to continue with their daily lives in a relatively normal fashion compared to what it was before. Other people, though, get very mired in their grief and their sense of loss and sadness. And it feels like their sorrow lasts a lot longer and inhibits their ability to find peace in their daily lives. After talking to a ton of beautiful grieving people over the past few weeks, I think I've narrowed it down to a few large things that really impact how you end up grieving. That's what I'm going to break down for you in today's video. Stay tuned. So we all know sadness is a common thread in grief, but think of it like a tapestry with a bunch of different threads woven together to make up your individual grief process. I want to talk about the factors that can affect what that tapestry looks like for you.
That is a beautiful tapestry.
I've done a lot of research on this, and after talking to a ton of people in the past few weeks, I think I have it narrowed down to around 6 factors that really impact your grief process. The first factor is your relationship to the deceased person. The intensity of your grief often kind of directly correlates with your relationship with the person that you lost and how close that relationship was. So the loss of a child or a sibling or a parent is often much more difficult and profound than the loss of like a distant relative or someone that you were just an acquaintance of. The depth of your attachment and the role that the deceased person played in your life is a crucial factor in determining how difficult your grieving journey is going to be. The second factor, your personal coping mechanisms.
How do you cope?
I drink.
People have different ways of dealing with emotional pain and loss. Some people seem to have this innate resilience that allows them to cope with that pain and loss more easily than others. These people seemed able to kind of adapt and change even in their darkest hours. Resilience can be cultivated, but for some people, like I said, it's just that kind of innate. Some people just have it and other people have to work really hard at it. The third factor that I found is support systems. The presence of a strong support system can significantly impact a person's ability to cope with their grief. Whether it is family, friends, support groups, counselors, therapists, doctors, whoever it is.
You have a hell of a support system.
All of those people provide kind of like an emotional backup that allows the grieving person to share their loss, share their sorrows, express their grief, and find comfort in the support of others. People who lack that kind of support often find it more difficult to navigate their grief. The fourth factor that I found, cultural or societal influences. Cultural backgrounds and societal norms can play a huge part in how we process our grief. And it can really impact how that grief is expressed or managed. Some cultures encourage the open expression of emotion, while others might advocate for a more like stoic approach.
We were never raised to talk about our feelings.
Some families encourage expression and others encourage kind of stuffing it down and not talking about it. And that can play a huge factor in your ability to express and deal with your grief. The fifth factor that I found are the circumstances surrounding the loss. So the nature of the loss itself can really impact the grieving process. So for example, sudden unexpected losses, like the loss of my daughter Libby in a car accident that, was never in the realm of my imagining. Those can leave people in complete shock, and it can really complicate the grieving process. Anticipated deaths, although they are still really, really painful, might allow for some degree of emotional preparation that makes the loss a little bit easier. The last factor is whether or not the grieving person has had previous losses or trauma. The weird thing about this one, though, is that it can act in kind of opposite different ways. For some people, if you've experienced a lot of previous loss or trauma, it compounds those losses and makes it more difficult to process your grief. Each subsequent loss can kind of reopen those old wounds and make it more difficult to heal. For some people, though, it seems almost the exact opposite. So for some people, if they've had a lot of loss or trauma in their past, it helps them build up that resilience as they learn to deal with the losses better and better each time that they happen. So that one can kind of work both ways. So those are the common factors that I've found. Do you know any more that you can think of? I would love to hear your examples or your ideas down in the comments. Share what you think are commonalities in how people react to their grief circumstances. So looking at all of those different factors, we see the different kind of things within a person or within their shared experience that impacts the way that they grieve. But I do want to stress that this doesn't mean that they are getting over their grief. In fact, the one thing that I've really found for people who seem to be doing well and moving forward with their grief, one of the biggest things is that they haven't forgotten their person. They haven't stuffed their grief down, but they have learned to live with their grief and make it a part of their life. So it's not a matter of getting over it, but more learning to live with it. And this can involve things that I talk about all the time on this channel. So it can be working to find meaning in your loss. This can be engaging in activities that honor your loved one's memory, or contributing to causes that they cared about, or doing things that your person loved in memory of that love. I also talk all the time about creating routine and structure in your life and setting very small goals that are achievable so you feel like you're accomplishing something in your day. Those routines and goals can really help provide a sense of normalcy in a time that is anything but normal. And also, I always say it, but getting back to basic self-care. So not self-care as in like taking a bubble bath, which is a great thing to do, by the way. I'm not knocking bubble baths, but just focusing on making sure you're checking the boxes on the basics. So things like getting healthy things to eat when you can, making sure you're getting enough sleep, and moving your body every now and then. Again, even though these are kind of commonalities, it's always important to remember that no one's grief journey is exactly the same. Comparing your grief journey to someone else's can be really unhelpful, and it tends to add unnecessary and undue pressure on yourself. So just try not to do it, okay? Each person has to find their own unique way through the landscape of loss, because everyone's factors that I talked about, those 6 factors, are going to be different. Your grief journey is going to be guided by your own unique circumstances. So whether your grief journey is marked by a quiet resilience or by visible sobbing, each journey is one of love and remembrance, and it's worthy of understanding and respect. So I'm curious if you would like to join into our community. I would love to hear in the comments what maybe your factors are, if any of those 6 factors that I talked about you think impacted your own grief journey. Remember, the more we share, the more we realize that we are not alone. So I would love to hear from you. Till next time, I am sending you love and hugs as always.